Hello, lovelies. Sorry it's been so long since I left you a message or a podcast, if you will. I have been super busy. I am in the middle of doing 3 talks, not 1, not 2, but 3 talks, and it's like completely overwhelming. And the great news is that I finally did the final interview for the magic show. So lots of creativity going on here. But these talks take a lot of work. And one in particular, you know, that moment where a friend says, hey, can you do a talk for me for my thing? And I'm like, sure. And then I want you to talk about ancient aliens. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Part of my bag, baby, is refuting the whole ancient alien business. And, you know, when I think about ancient aliens, all I can think about is that guy, right? That History Channel guy. The one with the insane hair and kind of googly eyes. But it was a very, very interesting undertaking to go back and look at some of our early research. Because after going through this process, there are certain things that are very, very much mind-boggling and really worthy of some consideration. Now, one thing that we have to kind of remember at this stage is that there really is no history, as I've said before. The past used to exist, but it no longer does. Akhenaten doesn't exist anymore, nor does your childhood. The only thing that is real is the present and the things that remain in the present. These can be the archaeological record, for one thing. But then what we have to do is look at what's in the archaeological record and try to make sense of it. And so basically what we end up doing is projecting our paradigm and our reality tunnel onto those objects from the past that remain in the present. And I think that's one of the reasons that history is such a mess, to be honest with you. Because at the end of the day, there are only stories made up by, let's say, 20th century people and now 21st century people that weren't there, frankly. They weren't there. So when it comes to the question of, are aliens real, and were there ancient aliens, really, the only thing we can say is, I don't know. But let me tell you a story that is actually in Magical Egypt Series 1. And at the time, this story absolutely blew me away. And it was kind of this really frustrating situation because the researcher in this case didn't want us to get into like the most exciting part of the story. So I'm going to today because I friggin' love this part of the story. But I'll start off with the fact that what we're talking about is a henge. Well, I'm calling it a henge, but it's not a henge. A henge normally it's a stone circle with hanging stones. So this is just a stone circle, but I'm going to use the word henge because I like it. And we all kind of know that henges have these astrological alignments. They point to solstices and that kind of thing. And what's really funny is that when I first heard about this, I was thinking Stonehenge. But let me tell you, this particular henge doesn't look like Stonehenge. It honestly looks like something that my nephew would build at the beach. It is a bunch of little round circle stones that don't really resemble each other in this completely random pattern. And For those of you who've watched Magical Egypt Season 3, you know that I am talking about Nabda Playa. And if you want to have a look, just Google it because you'll be like, huh? That's basically what I did when I first saw the pictures of Nabda Playa. In fact, what is kind of cool is that we went down to the beach and recreated it because it's so naive, perhaps, in appearance, but don't let Julia fool you because there's some serious stuff going on at Nabda Playa. Nabda Playa is a region in the Nubian desert of southern Egypt. And apparently, I don't know, I only know about this archaeological site, but there are many or several anyway that date back to the prehistoric period. Excavations have revealed evidence of a sophisticated culture that lived in the area between about 11,000 and 5,000 years ago. And today it's considered to be one of the earliest known examples of organized human settlement in the region. A lot of this I'm going on memory, so you might have to forgive me if I'm wrong. But some things I'm right, okay, because I do actually have the book. I just haven't read the whole book again. But Thomas is a really interesting guy, Thomas Brophy, who's the guy that did this research. When I first met Thomas, I read his first book that was called The Mechanism Demands a Mysticism. And very early on, it was one of the first influences on me that we need to expand our horizons out of the friggin' materialistic prison paradigm if we're going to understand what's going on. And that particular book I loved as it made the case that science has become so advanced that you cannot explain the things that we're finding in science without a mysticism, which is just really cool. So I highly recommend that book to anybody. It might be a little bit dated now, but the ideas are fabulous. Thomas is actually a really, really cool person. He is a researcher and an archaeoastronomer, and he is now head of a very cool university in Southern California in San Diego. And he was a gambler that had really good outcomes with his gambling because he was using this watch that he'd like timed to the Galactic center or something like that. Just really, really just like a mega brain, right? Really big. And he shares my birthday. So, of course, right, mega brains are always born on October the 28th. Oh, but anyway, in his other book, The Origin Map, Thomas Brophy found that the stone circle was a complex astronomical observatory, and it was capable of making precise astronomical measurements. He found that it was used to track the movement of stars, planets, and other celestial objects, as well as the cycles of the sun and the moon. They were tracking them over a period of thousands of years. That was very surprising at the time. And that's not all. The ancients that built this were able to ascertain the speed of light at that time, which is even more amazing. So that's getting a little bit more interesting, isn't it? By observing the apparent motion of the stars. Okay, so we have this Hinge. We know that hinges are astronomical calendars like Stonehenge and all of that kind of good business. But they went a little bit further and were able to determine the speed of light. So that's kind of cool. You know, it's probably not going to stretch the imagination that much to see the Nabda Playa stone circle as a prehistoric astronomical observatory. But wait, there's more. Inside the complex structure of the megaliths, one stone stood squarely at the central point, kind of like a marker. And I think they call that stone the cow stone. I asked Chance and he said it was the cow stone. But anyway, underneath it, they dug down through 12 layers of sand, I'm guessing, sand, clay, mud, who knows, to approximately the time of the Holocene period. They can, test the dirt and say, all right, that's 11,000 years ago. So they dug down to a period that was just after the end of the last ice age. And in the bedrock there, they found a bizarre sculpture. Now, the original team that did the excavations and everything, the guy's name was Wendoff. He did a huge big paper on it and everything, but he actually failed to explain what this sculpture was. And there might be a good reason for that. Because Thomas Brophy believed it to be a sculpture of the Milky Way galaxy. That's kind of huge, right? And I know that people are going to say, oh, it's just Jesus in toast and you see what you want to see. But first of all, Thomas Brophy believed that it looked like the Milky Way, either way, from looking down upon it or looking directly up to it. So imagine it was like a table, so that there was a top and then there's the bottom and like a pedestal that went back into the bedrock. Now, what's really interesting is this galaxy map, Thomas calls it, correctly indicated the position, the scale, and the orientation of our sun, and the placement of the spiral arms, the galactic center, even the associated Sagittarius dwarf galaxy that was only discovered in 1994. Brophy was even able to determine from Wendoff's accurate diagrams that the central point was directly above and surely represented the correct position of our sun on the galaxy map. So I remember at the time we went out to lunch with Brophy, and he had one of those pictures of the universe. You've seen it, right? And it's like, you are here. That's where we are. And surely this rock had a "you are here" kind of dot on it as well. Now, that kind of beggars belief, right? Because how would you make a representation of the galaxy, the entire galaxy, from Earth without at least, the technology we have today, from a viewpoint within the galaxy, not outside of it? No one making a representation of the galaxy from Earth without at least 20th century technology could know to make a representation from the viewpoint as Earth is within the galaxy, not outside of it. So again, we're here. We're in that little dot inside the galaxy. And look, if you pick up the book, can have a look at the picture, and it's, look, it's weird, but you can clearly see that he's talking about that sun, you are here bit, and the galactic center, and where the Milky Way spiral arms are, and the Sagittarius dwarf galaxy, and it points to the galactic center. Impressive. And so it begs the question then, how did they have so much knowledge about our galaxy? How were they able to carve a representation of our entire galaxy 11,000 to 5,000 years ago, unless the aliens told them? Well, as you know, I talk about supersensible organs of perception. So there is a possibility that they use their supersensible organs of perception and ascertain this knowledge, but I don't know. But wait, there's more. When they started digging around the site, they found numerous other bedrock complexes that also been placed around this Our Universe statue. And, once again, the archaeologists thought they were burial mounds, so they excavated 2 more of these mounds, expecting, of course, to find bones. But they didn't. In fact, let me read you a little bit from his book. If Our Universe is complex A, then complex structure B is extensive. Archaeologists were again disappointed to find no bones or grave goods at all. Instead, underneath 8 feet of sediment, they found another large, oddly shaped, lumpy sculpture cut directly onto the bedrock. The sculpture is almost twice as big as the Milky Way galaxy sculpture and is an odd, lumpy, tilted oval shape. It is probably a sculpture of the Andromeda Galaxy. The Andromeda Galaxy is a large, nearby elliptical galaxy that is about twice as big as our Milky Way galaxy. And together with our Milky Way, it is the dominant member of the local group of smaller galaxies. The size of the Andromeda Galaxy sculpture is to the same scale as the Milky Way galaxy. The distance and direction to the Andromeda Galaxy sculpture appear consistent with a projection from a coordinate system defined by the vertical notches cut into the Milky Way galaxy sculpture. That plane, based on the available drawings of the sculpture, appears consistent with the Milky Way galaxy plane, as it was on the vernal equinox sunrise on the date of northern culmination of the galactic center 10,909 BC. The motivated reader can verify this by a study of the celestial coordinates of the galactic center and the galactic pole on that date. The distance to the Andromeda Galaxy sculpture appears consistent with a projection from a coordinate system rotated about 90 degrees within that plane at vernal equinox sunrise. Anyway, blah, 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 blah. The point is that the Andromeda Galaxy map is the right scale, the right size, the right plane, and the right distance, as far as we can tell, as it actually is proportionally in the sky to the statues. So that's pretty amazing. The problem is really that it's all very complicated, but the good news is it is as profound as it is complicated, but there's so much geometry and math and light speeds and angles and blah, blah, blah that it's so easy to get lost in all of that. It's kind of like reading friggin' Schwala. Schwala, it's like, oh, Lord, take me back to school. But it's very, very, very cool. Now, what's not in the book, as far as I can remember, maybe I'm wrong, but this is where the controversy came up because Thomas didn't want to talk about it, is that there was something like 30 more of these galactic maps that were found. And I might be wrong, it might be 50. I can't honestly remember. But it was some huge astronomical number. So we have the Milky Way galaxy, we have the Andromeda Galaxy, and then we have all of these other rocks. So logically, it makes sense that there was, let's say, a minimum of 32 galaxy maps, all placed in the correct coordinates to be a 3D map of, let's say, the local galactic cluster. That's mind-blowing. That's absolutely, absolutely mind-blowing. Now, I go back to the point, did aliens tell us this? Aliens did it. Aliens told us. I mean, it very, very, very well could have been aliens. Because whoever made that sculpture either had to use some form of remote seeing, as I've said, or had the ability to travel outside not just our galaxy, but outside these 30 galaxies to be able to create this map. Now, when it comes to ancient aliens, there's lots of theories. There's like this interventionist theory, which is kind of interesting as well, and we'll probably get into that another day. But, the hypothesis suggests that ancient civilizations were influenced or even built by ETs, and it has faced criticism because of lack of evidence. But what is considered evidence, right? I mean, one of the biggest things that we have to deal with today is this whole rejected science business. And if it doesn't fit into your paradigm, it gets rejected. So the idea that aliens came is just as rejected as they had supersensible organs of perception, and that's rejected too. So basically the two theories that kind of make the most sense to me fall into rejected science. And so how do you explain it? It's just a interesting artifact the ancients built. They had no idea what they were doing, and let's flood the area. Apparently they were talking about flooding the area, and the stone. The cow stone, they just threw that in the friggin' quarry and it broke. So, that's how much credence they give the evidence. So the other problem is they say scientific inconsistencies. So these theories use assumptions that extraterrestrial civilizations with advanced technology would be interested. The assumption is they would be interested or capable of influencing human development. Well, anybody who has listened to the Sumerian mythologies would say they were clearly interested and they were clearly capable. So, again, we literally shoot ourselves in the foot when we're trying to understand these things without frigging science. But anyway, then they say another problem with it is historical and cultural context. And this one I do actually have to agree with, right? That the fact that ancient alien hypothesis fails to take into account the historical and cultural context of ancient civilizations, including their own technological advancements, religious beliefs, and, I would add, their supersensible organs of perception that I believe that they've developed. So, yeah, the ancient aliens is a very racist theory that, suggests that brown people couldn't accomplish these things on their own. And, yeah, I'm give that absolutely 2 thumbs up. Another problem, they say, is the interpretation of ancient texts. Now, Zecharia Sitchin has created quite a big controversy because of his interpretation of the ancient texts. And so a lot of the people that have relied on Zecharia Sitchin to kind of back up their theories have been thrown out with the baby in the bathwater. I don't know if that's valid. I think some of these other pieces of evidence stand on their own feet without Zecharia, but at the time, they're like, yeah, Zecharia said that, so, that helps my theory, and because of that, they've all got chucked out. So, And then, of course, the ancient alien television show didn't help anybody. That comes under the category of propaganda, right? So, the ancient alien hypothesis, while intriguing in terms of the mainstream, it lacks concrete evidence and scientific consistency. So, some of their points are good, some of their points are problematic. But anyway, I just wanted to share it with you because I thought that was very, very interesting. And with all truthiness, I admit that at the time, because I hadn't come on to other options that made sense to me, I was totally buying the ancient alien thing. And I was so blown away by the first rock, the Milky Way. When I heard about Andromeda, that blew my mind. And then when I heard that there was more rocks than we were even aware of galaxies. It's such an incredibly huge idea. And why is it here, right? Why was it here in the first place? Was it to show humans where we're from? Thomas Brophy called it the origin map. Was it a map to show us where to go? What was it for? Was it like a park that you could wander through and know the nature of the universe? Like a Disneyland of its time, with much more educational functionality? Was it just an artist, made a coral castle of cosmological proportions? I don't know. It's fascinating to think about, isn't it? Like, regardless of who did it, as Robert Bauval famously said in season 2, the how is one thing, but the why is another question altogether. So more soon, lovelies. Oh, by the way, I want to know who of you has Oculus headsets, because Chance is obsessed about creating a virtual space for Magical Egypt, and he is in the process of getting me all educated up on Spatial, and I've made my first Spatial space, but he wants to make an ancient Egyptian one. So please let me know, because I think we're bleeding edge here. The rooms that I've been into, I've seen like one room with like 4 Japanese people, and then a whole room with like 7 Spanish people, and 2 people in about each other room. But look, hey, he's just obsessed and he wants to do it, and he's got some great ideas. So if you have an Oculus, or if you know how to get onto Spatial on your phone, or if you've never even heard of Spatial but you want to, Google Spatial. You can actually get into these rooms on your computer. It's kind of like Second Life that I loved back in the day. In fact, Second Life back in the day had a hell of a lot more people in it than Spatial does at the moment. But hey, I'm supporting my husband. So, yes. If you have an Oculus, or you know about Spatial, or you want to look at the metaverse, ain't Magical Egypt in the metaverse, for God's sakes. Everybody's asking me to do things against my nature. Like I said, I am never going into the metaverse. And I'm never talking about ancient aliens. And look at me, for God's sakes. Anyway, more soon, lovelies. Thank you for listening, lovelies. And if you like this podcast and would like to support us, please go to magicalegypt.com. And I have made a special discount coupon just for you all. And the coupon code is LOVE. And that will get you $30 off any Magical Egypt purchase. Also, I've started Patreon, so you can mosey on over there and see if you want to contribute. But I appreciate you listening, and I appreciate all your support, and more soon.